Good morning. So I'm sure many of you saw that I'll be speaking about Ruth. You might have been perplexed because we did Ruth last week, but I didn't have the opportunity to speak about Ruth. And I thought it would be better to speak about Ruth than about Eicha, which we just finished, or Kohelet, which we're starting. We just started. Um, so I spoke about Kohelet many times. I'm not sure if here, yes, I think even, yes, almost every, um, yeah, I speak about Kohelet quite often. About Ruth, I never really had an opportunity to talk, and I, there was something nice I wanted to say about Ruth, so I thought maybe I'll talk about Ruth. But I also think it's a central thing, the idea which Megillat Ruth expresses is central to our whole Jewish being. Just started, or not even started. So similar to other books that we were seeing, the first question when we meet a book in Tanach is, why was it important to include this book in Tanach? Because it is not enough for a book to be nice or to even have an important message to be included in Tanach. In order to be included in Tanach, it has to be significant enough, meaning without this, the message that Tanakh gives us wouldn't be complete. So what is it that Ruth gives us that we need for our message? So in order to understand that, I'd like to look at the book of Ruth, which we learned last week, and to try and see what is so first of all, it's a beautiful story, very, very touching, moving, a lot of tragedy, but at the end of the day, through the good deeds and wonderful character of its heroes, especially of Ruth, it comes to somewhat of a happy ending. Sorry? They will live happily ever after. Yes, those who remain lived happily ever after. So there's something very special about that story, but the question is why bring it into the Tanakh? So here I want to discuss what I discussed at the very first shiurim that we had this year when we just started to go through the Tanakh, and those are the hyperlinks that we have in the Tanakh. So the story of Ruth hyperlinks to many other Tanakh stories, and it does so first of all through the story itself, but also through certain phrases that are unique to it and unique to very specific other places in the Torah. And through those hyperlinks, I think the Megillah wants to tell us something about its message. So it's not just what we see, which is very important, but also about it goes much deeper. So the most obvious connection I'll get to at the very end. What is the most obvious connection between Ruth and what other Tanakh story? Yes, but what link would it refer to? Say, okay, it gives me the Yichus of David HaMelech, fine, but it links to another story. Esther? Okay, I mean, both are women, but I don't know if much more than that. Okay, we'll get to it at the end. We'll get to it at the end. Okay, so I want to start with a link to Avraham Avinu. So that is quite deliberate. In the Megillah, we see in Perek Bet Pasuk Yud Aleph, when Ruth meets Boaz, then Boaz tells her what a wonderful person she is and how he heard about her. But what does he what does he tell her he knows? Just a minute. I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong place. But where is it? Did I say Perek Bet Pasuk Yud Daled? Yes. Yud Aleph, Yud Aleph. Yes. Vayan Boaz Vayomer La. So this is the first meeting that they have, and the first time they meet each other, and he says, "Huged ugadli, kol asher atzit et chamotecha reimotishech, vatazvi avich veimech ve'eretz moladtech, vatelchi el am asher lo yadat mol shilshom." So vatazvi avich veimech ve'eretz moladtech reminds us very much of Lech lecha me'artzecha miladtecha u'mebeit avicha el haaretz asher areka, and that connection makes quite sense because Avraham Avinu really left his people in order to come close to Hashem, and Ruth is doing exactly that. And Avraham Avinu became Am Yisrael, and Ruth is coming into Am Yisrael. So she's doing a very similar journey. But there is a difference. There is a difference. And that is with Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu is Lech lecha me'artzecha u'molodtecha u'mebeit avicha el haaretz asher areka. And then what? And Hashem tells him, "Ve'escha legoy gadol, va'avarcha shmecha, ve'yeh bracha, va'avarcha mevarchecha, u'mekalelcha or, ve'nivrechu b'cha kol mishpachot ha'adama, u'zarecha." So Avraham Avinu leaves his home, but he leaves his home with a big promise in his pocket. Meaning he knows it's going to be difficult. My life is going to be very hard, but this is for the greater good, because in the future will be really, really good. Ruth leaves everything behind for what? So Naomi tells her for what, right? Naomi tells her when she is that right? שובנה מתי לכנה, כי זקנתי להיות לאיש, כי אמרתי יש לי תקווה, גם הייתי הלילה לאיש וגם היה לדברים, עליהן תסברנה עד אשר יגדלו, עליהן תגנה לבלתי היות לאיש, על בנותיי, כי מר לי מאוד מכם, כי יצא ביד השם. Naomi says to Ruth and Orpah, you have nothing to come for. I have nothing I could give you. There is nothing you could have. You're coming with me, you're doomed. That's the end of your life, because you're never going to get married. You're not going to have children ever again. That's the end of the line for you. And Orpah sensitively enough, she makes a normal decision, exactly right, and goes home and fine. You're right. I'm sure she also loved Naomi. She also, but you're making. I have to think about my future. What can I do? She goes home. Ruth says, "No, I'm going with you." And so Ruth is Lech lecha me'artzecha u'molodtecha el haaretz asher. It's not even who knows where it's. So Ruth is total commitment. Maybe we have even here in the story some combination of the Lech lecha and the Akedah together, right? She's willing to give up everything, like Avraham and the Akedah, just in order to be faithful to Naomi, and then later, right, Veloai Cheloai, also to know her God and her people, etc. So that is the first link. Now, why is the link to Avraham Avinu so important? So we said, so first of all, this Avraham Avinu starts everything, right? That's how he started, and Ruth is now joining, so she joins the same way that Avraham started. Ruth is joining, but it's not only that. Avraham is also known as what? As right, Chesed, and Ruth also. The word Chesed throughout the Megillah comes up again and again and again. The whole theme of the Megillah is Chesed, right? Ruth doing Chesed with Naomi, and then Boaz doing Chesed with Ruth. The whole thing has to do. The whole story rolls through Chesed.
And anybody who doesn't do Chesed, like Abimelech and whatever, they got
right. There's also the negative.
Right.
Abimelech leaves because he leaves his people at the time of distress, and he stops it. Meaning anyone who's not giving but leaves ends up bad. Those who do Chesed end up good. That is part of the message of the Megillah, and we'll get back to it. We'll get back to it soon. Now, it is interesting, and that the connection between Boaz and Ruth. How would you how would you describe? Would you describe it as a romantic love story?
No.
No, right? I think you're right. It's not a romantic love story. It's it's a story of um, an older man taking care of a younger woman who needs. Yeah, he spreads his wing over her and takes her on. Yes, how do you say tachat chasuto? He under his wing. Yes, under his auspices, he gives her a place. There is a lot of. It's not that there are no. It's not that he sees her only as this poor thing who needs help. He admires her, and he says that again and again throughout the Megillah. Right? We just read that. Gadli, what a wonderful person you are, and how you did. So there is admiration, and Ruth also looks up to Boaz. So they do look up to each other, but there's not necessarily this romantic love between them because it's they're not they're not of the yes the one is an established person, she's a young girl. There's not, but the story also hints to that in a few places. One place that it hints to it is where it throws us back to Rivka, and that is very interesting. Where does it throw us back to Rivka? So in that same pasuk that we read, then Boaz tells Ruth, "V'tavzi avich ve'imech ve'eretz molatech v'tilchi." So that throws us back to another pasuk. Where do we have la'azov v'tavzi avich ve'imech v'tidbeki? What? Right. על כן יעזוב איש את אביו ואת אמו ודבק באשתו והיו לבשר אחד. Now there, where is it? So that is a very romantic thing to say. Al ken ya'azov ish et avich ve'et imo ve'davak be'ishto. So now when Boaz uses that phrase, I know that azav v'tazvi avich ve'imech ve'eretz molatech. So now what? So and here take this kali. Here you could say, right? So, but he says no. He says what? Where is it? Yes, ותאמר רות המואביה גם כי אמר אליי אם הנערים אשר לי תדבקין, meaning ותדבק, meaning the לדבוק, to stick together, right? So a person leaves his parent, right? כן יעזוב איש את אביו ואת אמו ודבק באשתו והיו לבשר אחד. But that ודבק, so Boaz doesn't say and now let's Lidvok. No, and now go with the boys because that's where you belong. That's her. Both her age is not a thing in Tanach, but it has to do with class, with where you come from, where they go. It's not. It doesn't even start. Yes, so go with them, and then at the end it doesn't, for whatever reason. We know it carries on and it works otherwise, but she doesn't. But that is the first thing, and then it moves on.
What was the connection with Rivka?
I did say the connection with Rivka, but now I see that there is a connection. Why didn't I? Oh, I missed it here. So I'll tell you. I didn't write it down. So with Rivka, we have a connection of a language connection where did I write it down? Oh yes. Asher lo azav chasdo. When Boaz, when he says right, Buchat LaHashem biti asher lo azav chasdo et hachaim ve'et hametim. So that phrase asher lo azav chasdo is only once more in the Torah. That is with Eliezer, and when Eliezer davens and he finds Rivka, he says Baruch Hashem asher lo azav chasdo, and showed me Rivka. Another phrase that is only twice in Tanach is ad im kilu. The Adim Kilu is again and again mentioned again. Just a minute, let's find it here because I don't. Yes. כי אמר אליהם נערים אשר לי תדבקין עד ימכילו את כל הקציר אשר לי. So Boaz Chesed comes to play that he says, you could stay with them, meaning with my boys, and take the leket ad im kilu, until the very end. Don't worry, until the end of the kasir, until the end of the harvest, you could stay with them. Meaning he's giving her, she doesn't have to worry about finding food. Now that reminds us of Rivka, who comes to Eliezer and tells her, I'll give you to drink and your camels ad im kilu lishtot, meaning the chesed of Boaz and the chesed of Rivka are both described with these words, the only places in Tanach, ad im kilu. And another third thing is vaikach ota leisha. Now you would think that phrase is vaikach et so and so vatehi lo leisha. Sorry, vaikach so et so and so vatehi lo leisha. So Yitzchak with Rivka, it says vaikach et Rivka vatehi lo leisha. With Ruth, Boaz takes a vatika. Okay, but there is, and this is where the phrase makes a very big difference. So first of all, again, we're talking about chesed, and the link has to do with chesed. But also another thing, note that here Boaz stands for Rivka, right? It's Rivka's chesed, Boaz chesed. But when it says vaikach et Ruth, vaikach et Ruth, vatehi lo leisha, there's one word missing that it says in Rivka. Vaikach et Rivka vatehi lo leisha vayehaveh. The word vayehaveh is missing here, and it could be that through missing that word, it's not a relationship of, it's not necessarily a romantic relationship. It's a different kind of relationship. Now, this kind of relationship could be that to someone living today in the modern world sounds very strange, right? This is not the relationship that we. But in the ancient world, these relationships also made sense. Not every relationship was one of romance, and but relationship of chesed is also very very important.
What was it from the Tanaim? A Kohen that he married, they say he had like 80 wives, so he can support them.
Okay. Yes. So this is. But anyhow, it's that's here on the. I think the Ketuvim reflect that. Another thing where usually whenever there is a romantic relationship, it always says about the woman everywhere in Tanakh that she was Yefat Toar, right? regarding Ruth, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that she was Yifat Torah. This is something that I'm quoting Professor Jonathan Grossman here. It doesn't say anywhere that she was Yifat Torah, but we could assume she was Yifat Torah because we also could see how people react to her in the and the way people speak to her and what they say to her. So it was quite obvious that she was good looking, but it's not good looking in the Tanakh. Usually it's mentioned when there is a type of a romantic relationship. Here it wasn't, but here it wasn't part of the relationship. Okay. Okay, the most obvious connection though is, and now I'm getting to the most obvious connection. It's mentioned explicitly at the end. Just if no one got it before we got to the end, then it is mentioned explicitly. Perek Daled Pasuk Yud Daled. I'm sorry, not Pasuk Yud Daled. Pasuk Yud Zayin. I'm starting with Pasuk Yud Zayin. ותקרנה לו השכנות שם לאמור, יולד בן לנעמי, ותקרנה שמו עובד, הוא אבי ישי אבי דוד. Okay, at the very end, so there's a son that is given birth to, and it's interesting that son was given birth to, Ruth gives birth, but now it's Yulad ben leNaomi, because Naomi now has a future. Naomi has a grandchild. That's really special. But then it says, then we go back. I'm sorry, even before that, in Pasuk Yud Aleph, ויאמרו כל העם אשר בשער והזקנים עדים ייתן השם את האישה הבאה אל ביתך כרחל וכלאה אשר בנו שתיהם את בית ישראל ועשה חיל באפרתה וקרא שם בבית לחם. Now all that makes perfect sense, right? רחל and Leah בנו שניהם את בית ישראל. They established the house of Israel, and may the wife that you bring in would be like Rachel and Leah. That's a very nice blessing to someone who just married a new wife. But then they continue, V'hi beitcha keveit Peretz, and may your house would be like the house of Peretz. Who's Peretz? Asher yalda Tamar liYehuda, min hazerah asher yiten Hashem lecha min hana'ara hazot. That Tamar had given birth to Yehuda from the seed that Hashem will give you from this Na'ara, from this girl. What?
Right.
Peretz, Tamar.
Tamar tricked her father.
What are we talking here about? How did we get to that? Like what's okay? So Boaz is from Yehuda, and they're all tzetzaim of Peretz. We know that. Okay, but why mention it here? And then at the very end, Ve'ile toldot Peretz, Peretz olidet Chetzon. Okay, so but it's more than that. It's more than that. If we didn't get it until this point, then the Megillah is telling me, do you remember the story of Yehuda and Tamar? Think about that and think about Ruth. What was the story? Let's start with a story here with Ruth. What is the story? We have Avimelech who leaves his people and goes somewhere else and marries other women. And then what's his punishment? Everyone dies. His children die.
He didn't marry others.
Not his sons married other women. His sons married other women. And what's the punishment? His sons die. And then after his sons die, okay. Then there is some. I'm sorry. They die childless. Right. That's an important point. Right. There is no. Right. They're being cut off, and then someone remains, his daughter-in-law, right? And through the daughter-in-law, somehow, even though it wasn't supposed to happen, somehow there is a continuation through her. So in her case, it was because she was with Yehuda and she tricked him, and they were together, and she gave birth, and Peretz, and that was the continuation. Here, well, the the one that is playing Yehuda's role here died as well, Avimelech. So it couldn't work with that. But Ruth is Tamar, that's right. She's the daughter-in-law. There's the son-in-law that died, or two son-in-laws that died. So there was the same one that married both of them. Here was two different, doesn't matter. But now there is some way of continuation that happens through Ruth, the same way that there was some way of continuation through Tamar in the story of Tamar and Yehuda. So somehow,
in both cases, the women take the initiative.
I'm sorry? In both places, the women
take
take the initiative. Right. Absolutely. Yes. So
Yehuda does the right thing in the end. And Boaz does the right thing in the end.
right.
They both,
Yes.
whatever problems.
Right.
Yehuda had to work through in order to,
Mm-hmm.
bring himself
Yes.
back into.
Right.
into what we
Yehuda,
consider-
the story was more of a happy ending because Yehuda himself comes back to his brothers and everything seems to come back. Here Avimelech died, but Ruth and his wife Naomi. So Naomi plays here the role of Yehuda, sort of, and she does come back. Okay, so there's definitely the connection there, and there is. I forgot who it was. Someone, one of there is an article somewhere about the fascinating fact that Ruth comes from Moab and Boaz comes from Tamar, and there are similarities here. How were Moab created? This is where it gets a bit tricky, right? The daughters of Lot, right? That tricked him, and then they had Moab. How was Peretz given birth to? Tamar tricked Yehuda and had Peretz. And here we have the two descendants of the daughter-in-law in this case, and daughter who tricked, right? Who tricked the man and well, took initiative and brought the next generation. And now they both get together, and that is the establishment of the house of David. Now, in the parasha of Arayot, right? Definitely, there's ancestry in this, right? In the case of Moab, there is definitely ancestry, incest. How does the Torah? Let's look in Parashat Emor for a minute. In the Parashat Arayot, okay, it refers to some of the Arayot as chesed, meaning it's chesed gone wrong, right? Meaning sometimes giving, when you give too much, it is also an issue. But so we have chesed in both ways playing a role here, and the question is what is exactly the connection there? I want to suggest the following, and that is if we look in the book of Ruth, and we have a lot of Torah laws playing a role in the book, right? So we have the kinyan of shlifat nal, and it makes a point that Bezot HaTeudah B'Yisrael, right? Shalaf ish na'alo, and it goes through the explaining how the law works. The Goel, the Geulah of the Geulah of Sadeh, the Geulah of another, the Yibum of a wife of the Met plays a role. The Leket plays a role, right? And there's another halacha that is not mentioned, but is also always at the background, and that is Lo Yavo Amoni U'Moavi B'Kal Hashem, that this story goes against, and we'll have to see how it's reconciled. But the law of the Torah is always here on the table as we read Ruth. So, however, there's a twist. There's always the law, but with the law, there is always, it gives it takes the law to the side of chesed, meaning it's talking about leket, for instance. So in the Torah, there is the law of leket, but leket is only what was forgotten in the field after already the owner had left. Here, leket is even when they're still there. No, you could be there, and meaning leket is done in an extra way because of chesed. Geula, yibum is brother to brother. Here it's a much larger thing. And why is it made as large as that? For the reason of chesed, because there is a poor a young woman who needs help here, and through yibum, through taking responsibility, that is that. Now, it is even that sometimes reading the law that way goes against of reading the law in a more stricter way, right? Because when the first Goel, right? So Boaz takes, that is another reason why we see that there is no romance in the story, right? Because when Ruth first comes to Boaz, and Boaz tells her, "Look, you're the best thing of it. You're a great person, but you know, I think so and so should marry. If he won't, I will." Yes, that's not something too romantic to say, right? But Boaz does that because he says he has the first right, right? He has the first right, but romance doesn't recognize rights, right? But okay, but anyhow, that Goel, why doesn't he marry Ruth? Pen ashchit et nachalati. That will go, meaning he says, I'll be seen as doing the wrong thing if I marry her, because she's not good enough to come into the family and to build a home with. I can't do that. Meaning, but he's not doing it because he thinks he's doing a bad thing. He thinks he's doing the right thing. Meaning, he reads the law in a certain stringent way that says that this is the right thing to do. The right thing is to not marry her. But Boaz reads the law in a way of chesed. He says, no, if you don't do it, I'll do it. Meaning and again, the idea of Amoni velo Amonia, Moavi velo Moavia, that is again reading the law, the chok, the halacha in a way that has chesed, rachamim, mercy, even you could say, right? Chemla brings it in, and reading it in such a way that allows that between one and another. And it could be that this is the very central message of the book of Ruth altogether. It tells us about the story of Yehuda, of Ruth and Boaz, going back to Tamar and Yehuda, where according to the strict law, Tamar was supposed to be burned, but instead he says, Sadka mimeni. No, she actually did the right thing, meaning sometimes we have to know also to go lifni mishurat hadin. Sometimes the law needs to be interpreted in a way of chesed, but also sometimes even we go lifni mishurat hadin in some extreme in some extreme cases, and that is what the Megillah of Ruth is telling us, and that is the one what allows. That's she is the grandmother of the house of David. What allows a king to rule is to understand that he rules according to the law, but that law needs to be interpreted always according to Chesed, and to know how to go lifnim mishurat hadin. And it could be, and this is already more of a sort of a drasha. Maybe that's why we read the book of Ruth, Davka and Shavuot. Now, it's true because it talks about you make tzir chitim, Shavuot is tzir chitim, but it could be that there's also an inner reason. On Shavuot, we celebrate the Torah as a law, right? We received the Torah, the law from Mount Sinai, and with it, we read the book of Ruth to realize and to tell us the law is important, but you have to also know how to interpret it in a way of chesed and not in a strict way that makes it lose its meaning. So if I ask myself, coming back to the question why Ruth is in the Tanach altogether, I think this is exactly why Ruth is in the Tanach, to emphasize the idea of chesed. First of all, it tells us it's a tragic story of people who died because they didn't live a life of chesed. And the message is, if one lives only for oneself, then even life for themselves, they end up not having, right? They die with nothing. And when one is willing to give up everything, but stick with others and help others, meaning when I look out my way of seeing the world and what I could do is outwards, not inwards, not what I could do for myself, but what I could do for the world, then I end up gaining everything. But if I keep on looking inside, like Avimelech or Machlon and Kilion, even from their names we could see, then we end up losing everything. So that is the first important. It's Chesed, Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Literally, it's not a mystical thing, but that's like how the world stands through Chesed. But even the Torah needs to be Torat Chesed. That even the law is interpreted through Chesed, and on that, the house of David, etc., is built and could be continued.
Did David ever meet his grandmother?
I remember reading something about it. I think maybe it's Chazal or maybe someone else that says that she was still alive when he was given birth to. I think there is something about that. But,